Okay, hi everybody. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. So,
Yes, we can.
awesome. So the first thing on our agenda is a photo share of Shoelace Park. And so this was a couple weeks ago when we had the remnants of, that was Tropical Storm Ophelia, right?
Yep.
And it caused, I don't know if anybody else saw it, but I was thinking that maybe we could take a minute. This isn't necessarily we have an agenda or have a goal in sharing these, but to have a conversation about it. We have the Parks Department here and the Bronx River Alliance. And we just want to, as people who live in this community experience it, kind of share what it's like living through some of these occurrences and how they affect our parks. So I only looked at Shoelace Park, but there's probably other parks in the district that have been affected. So this is what I saw, and this was on Friday night around 6 p.m. This is the trails. I don't know if people can see pretty well, but this is looking north. This isn't even along the Bronx River is normally behind this row of trees. So it's crept up really, really big, and this water isn't, I wouldn't guess, safe because it's probably got a lot of runoff from our sewage system. This is the basketball courts in Shoelace Park. These are those little pads on the playground that have floated up and just drifted. This is playground itself. That's several feet of water. And this probably, I would assume happens every major storm now. These are the bocce ball areas of the park, which I kind of wanted to talk about in our discussion about different capital projects. I'm not sure if these are used as often as maybe the space could be. But here's some more photos showing the floating e-bikes, e-scooters. And here is the Bronx River Parkway. So the river itself, cuts through right here, and it's just so swollen. I got one other photo. Oh, shoot. I don't know. Here it is. So this is a major calamity that we have to shut our highways down whenever there's a major storm. So I was wondering if anybody else had an experience of this this flooding event or wanted to talk about it specifically as it relates to the park. And I opened it up also to our partners at Bronx River Alliance. Hey, Daniel and Sid, thanks so much for joining us today. So what do we think about this? Do you guys want to talk about it at all?
I mean, it's a floodplain. We built facilities in it, and this is just part of what happens with nature. And I know we've emailed, and I know George and I and Maggie and I think some other folks had gone on a walk about the Shoelace Park master plan and looking at moving these facilities outside of the floodplain. That this is an issue here in Fort Knox, and there's not too much that can be done about it from, I think, the parkland scale. Really needs to be the facilities need to be moved. I don't know of other options, honestly, and we know that it's an issue, and this is something that we've been trying to work. We have been working with parks closely to look at what we can do next. And I know the bocce courts you mentioned, I think those are actually slated to be replaced with exercise equipment due to some advocacy. And I was actually happy to see that they were not, threatened by the water. I think they were a good 4 or 5 feet higher than the water line that I saw. That was probably a little bit later in the evening than you were there. And I see Felix. I don't know, Felix. Good to see you. I don't know if you have any comments on this. So you've probably seen this more than I have.
Oh, I have seen it since 2000, and it's been like that for many years. And when there's heavy storms like that, it's it's the amount of the river, the size of the river, the width of it. It just can't take that much volume of water that it's coming down. So you're gonna have a major backup going into the playground and shoelace because it's the lowest point of the flood zone. And we're hoping maybe in the future it will come up that they could think of something bringing up the playgrounds up into the up high grounds. And as for the bocce courts, they are going to be exercise equipment in the future. Right now, they are doing still the designs on it right now.
A lot of the flooding is tied back to like decisions in the 50s when we channelized the river and made it basically a straight line. And rivers are supposed to meander. This is one of the straightest parts of the river. It doesn't leave a lot of space for water to go. And I think the point is there's no like way to fix this. We have to figure out a way to adapt the resources that we have. So that's why we're kind of here to talk to you guys about it and strategize like the priorities around that.
Definitely, and we thank you so much for taking your time out of your Tuesday night to do that. One thing I remember hearing a presentation about, I think last year, was a capital project by the DDC or DEP, where they were going to install, I think around 233rd Street, a pump to pump out water from the highway. Are you guys familiar with that? Am I making something up? Okay. Well, I'll have to connect with DEP to see where that is, because I thought that was kind of something that the city was thinking about. But so the next topic, unless there's any other comments or experiences people want to share, I know we have other people on the call. If you'd like to introduce yourself, if you're from an organization or a member of the board, if you just want to say hi, feel free to unmute yourself and say so. So the other thing on the agenda is brainstorming Parks Committee capital and expense budget requests. So this is something that isn't exclusive to the Bronx River, but as we're talking about flooding and stuff, it's ever more important. Sid, I do have in another tab, I've got the Shoelace Master Plan pulled up. So if you want to talk at all about or reference that, I'm happy to share. But I wanted to kind of turn it over to you guys because now is the time to start putting together ideas about what the Parks Committee wants to recommend for capital improvements and especially with parks and stuff. So having that discussion with the Parks Department here would be great. So Sid, do you want to kind of lead this conversation from your perspective?
Yes, absolutely. And again, this is a Bronx River perspective, and this is the Parks Committee. There are obviously more parks in the community board district than just within the Bronx River corridor. Am I allowed to share screen? Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Are you able to?
Yep, looks like it. Does that look good for everybody?
Looks good.
All right, great. So we jumped right in today, started talking about Shoelace Park immediately. Shoelace Park is along the Bronx River, and I work at the Bronx River Alliance along with Daniel. I'm the Greenway coordinator working on projects in parks along the Bronx River. We work very closely with New York City Parks. Thank you, Felix. Felix is a district manager as well with New York City Parks and works with us to maintain the Bronx River. And we serve as a coordinated voice. We work in harmonious partnership to protect, improve, and restore the Bronx River corridor. Our goal is to make it a healthy, ecological, recreational, educational, and economic resource for all of the communities through which it flows, which includes lots of Community Board 12. Very quick history. Modern restoration efforts for the Bronx River have been going on for 50 plus years now. Started out as the Bronx River Restoration, a group of youth volunteers working to pull cars out of the river and other appliances and things like that. Then started strategizing as the Bronx River Working Group, which developed the Bronx River Greenway Plan. And finally, the Bronx River Alliance was founded in 2001 and celebrated the 20-year anniversary 2 years ago. And here we are today, working out of Starlight Park in River House as a public-private partnership with New York City Parks. We run a lot of programs and projects as well. Our program areas are ecology, education, our foodway, which is exclusively in Concrete Plant Park at the moment, and our greenway, our outreach, and our recreation programs. A lot of these kind of touch throughout the whole corridor, mostly in the Bronx. We do go up towards Westchester, but most of our work does take place in the Bronx. And here is kind of the map of what the Bronx River Greenway looks like in Community Board 12. Community Board 12 obviously stretches to the Westchester border, as does the Bronx River, and the Bronx River in Community Board 12 goes from there down all the way to Gun Hill Road, and a little bit into Bronx Park. So that includes Woodlawn, that includes Muskrat Cove, that includes Shoelace Park, and some other assets we've advocated for outside of parks are the 233rd two-way bike lane, as well as the Webster Avenue parking protected bike lane that goes from the station all the way up to the border. And we just talked about Shoelace Park. This is obviously the flagship park of the Bronx River. This is what it's going to look like in a few weeks. Looking forward to that. Muskrat Cove, a little bit of a dead-end park up at the northern end in Woodlawn by the Metro North Station. In addition to talking about capital projects in Shoelace Park, if there's any interest in Muskrat Cove, this is feel free to bring that up as well. I don't know if any of you have ever had the chance to visit, but it is a really, really cool part of the Bronx River. Shoelace Park, which I think we're going to talk about, so I'll just kind of hold off on this for a little bit. Luke referenced the master plan, which was a plan developed in 2010 to basically plan for the future of Shoelace Park, which includes that idea of moving assets like the playground up and out of that floodplain. This is the 233rd Street and Webster Ave bike lanes. They look really great. They create a lot of nice connections along the river. And I know here at CB12, y'all advocated for the White Plains Road bikeway, and that has helped bring people to and from the Greenway and realize this connection, more of a transportation connection when it comes to bikes as opposed to simply recreational. And we have upcoming events, but I think I can bring that up a little bit later because we want to get right into talking about capital projects, improvements, and the parks in CB12.
Thank you so much, Sid. And I love all those photos that you shared. So yeah, this is something that, as a community board, we put together recommendations every year to the city and say, hey, these are the capital requests that Community Board 12 has. And here are, I think we get 50 or something around there. And expense requests, those are for like maintenance and things that are not necessarily building stuff. But when it comes to our parks, it's a little bit of both. So that might mean a capital request might be moving that playground from the floodplain up higher. And an expense request might be maintaining playground equipment or something like that. So we've got some local experts here in the room, and just wanted to get your sense of, what would the Bronx River, if the Bronx River had a wish list, what would be on that wish list for capital improvements? And Felix, if you want to chime in from your experience as being, in this community, working for the Parks Department, what would that be like? Where do you see the most need in terms of our parks in the district?
Well, well, shoelace definitely has been for many years that I have worked there before, back in 2000. Well, that's the major part of the playground and the park houses there. Is always in the flood zone areas. So that's the major issues in those areas. If fundings can come through, we can think of something bringing it above the flood plan, so we can able to keep, because every year when that playground becomes underwater, all our resources go indirectly into that playground to reset the safety surfaces, anything else, removing mud and sludge and things like that in the playground and pathways. So if it's able to get fundings to bring up that playground up above the flood drain, it would be great. And the park house itself too needs to be brought up higher.
Sorry, you said that you're referring to that bathroom right over there next to the
Yeah, the park house, yes, the
park
park
house.
house. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we've got two of them. You've got the 219th Street, 227.
Hmm.
I know we have more experience with the 219th Street one, and even, just it's like below grade to the point where, it requires, I think, and feel like you might know better, it requires servicing a lot, like it's out of order,
Hmm.
more frequently than other bathrooms because of it being below probably the sewer lines.
Yeah, because at this point right now, when we just had this last storm, bathrooms were backed up. We couldn't actually, we had to call our plumbers in to actually open up the sewage for us, because with all the mud just going, whatever the mud going into the piping areas and the sewage areas, it was just a major problem. When you flush, everything was coming back through the floor drains. So that's the major problem that goes on there a lot.
Which makes
Yeah,
it, a public health risk as well as like an infrastructure risk. We have issues with combined sewer overflows on the Bronx River. Some of the largest in the city are here, which is when it rains a lot, sewage will overburden our systems, and it will go into the river. And this park house is basically acting like a mini one when this happens. It clogs up and it can spill into the river.
yeah, and I think Luke, George still there, or he stepped
No,
out?
he left.
Okay. So, like we had a lot of community engagement before my time at the Bronx River Alliance, and that's what created the Shoelace Park Master Plan. I think it's 10 or more years old, and things change. What we want is we want, an ecology that works for the river, and we want a park and ecology that works for the people around it. So, things might have changed besides just moving resources and facilities out of the floodplain. I know there was talk of like, oh, well, maybe we can reimagine having, an amphitheater, indoor, outdoor, covered or not covered. So I think that was something that came up on a walk that we went on maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I'll look up those notes while we're on the call, and um, there were lots of ideas in there, and really, and then there's also, I think there was a project that redid the Greenway from 213th Street all the way up to maybe 229th. And so there is a section that has not been redone, and that's still the old Bronx River Parkway roadbed, which maybe it's something the community likes having. Maybe it's something that folks want reimagined in another way. Um, but yeah, I would definitely like say, as a general term, point of feedback is people in parks like working bathrooms. So I, like I would push for that just from my personal experience of talking with folks. And we can always talk about, looking at the Shoelace Master Plan, presenting on that, maybe at a future community meeting, looking at if things have changed. Um,
Yeah, and I know these are kind of big projects we're talking about right now too. Like moving a playground's not easy. It takes a long time. Same with a park house. I think it's important to have some, maybe, I don't know if easy is the word, but quick wins. Something that we can implement in the short term that actually really does improve something on park usership experience. And Luke, in an email, you brought up more ADA accessible entrances. So I would love to talk about that more. I do see a hand raised though, and I want to address it before.
Yes, Stephanie, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, how are you? So I'm sorry, I want to take the hand down. How do I get my hand down? Oh, I'll take it down in a minute. I'm a school social worker at PS21 Philip Sheridan School. It's on between 225th and 226 off of White Plains Road. I work with students in temporary housing, and I've constructed a garden at my school. But the school abuts the local playground, the Rienzi playground, and Rienzi Park playground. I wanted to talk about it. I brought it up in previous meetings, but I was told to bring it up at the start of the year, that maybe it could be marked for some sort of capital revenue or to put it in the bigger projects. It's a small park. Is anybody familiar with it? Okay.
So I'm not offhand, but I'd like to look it up while you're speaking.
Yeah, I had taken some pictures and I could email them to you if you want to post them. It's I just wasn't I in previous, like, if you want to put me down for next meeting, and I could put a little presentation together that I made for a previous meeting. It has like a baseball field, but it's incredibly worn down and in very bad shape. It wouldn't require, like if it was ever earmarked to get turf, let's say. To me, I think it makes a statement that the community is, it's a very underserved community. And I think to see this playground speaks to this, because my opinion is, every community should have a post office, a library, a park, and they should all be of similar quality. The quality looks very low. So the playground is nice. The bathrooms are not nice. There's a lot of aggressive goings on there, and a lot of, like, people are openly smoking pot, everything. It's right next to the school. Literally, there's a fence that divides the school property and the playground, but on the other side of the playground is the softball field, and it's just, yeah, you could see already it's just all worn out and very crummy looking. And I could show you better pictures, but it's really, so there's our school and the playground's right there. But this, like, and then there's on the other side, there's this fenced in, like, small square um on, I guess that's 226th Street. And it makes no sense, because to me it could be a tiny little garden. It's probably as big as a car. This fenced in little greenery. And this is so great that you could do this. So if you keep going, it's the park part. So if you keep going to the left and we move over, I don't know if it'll show you that. Yeah. Where are we? Yeah, there it is. So that's like this fenced in square nothing. It's a boxed in, and it's locked. It's like, to me, make it a little community garden or something, or grow flowers, but it doesn't need to be boxed in. And I'm guessing it might have been a property that somebody could rent for like a private something, but it just sits there. And the grass is very overgrown. It's really shabby. It could simply be so much nicer. Like, I get so much free stuff. I apply for grants for our school. It's going to take me a long time, but it's really coming along. And I really think, like, there could be some nice plantings. And again, the neighborhood is not fabulous, so it is not uncommon to find, like, bullet shells in the trees on the street. But, like, they just recently mulched the trees around the park, but they didn't mulch the trees around the school, and they're filled with broken glass. And I do think, like, somehow that's probably the school's responsibility, but I'm not the one to be communicating that to my school. It looks so disgusting. And, like, my first year, this is my 5th year at the school. My first year, I, like, bought mums and I planted it, and I, like, cleaned up all the trees, and they were like, don't bother. And of course they got trampled on. I bought, like, the little garden cabbage and stuff. I wanted it to look nice for the start of school, but the families have really responded nicely to the garden we make there, and it's really expanding, and people will come by, and I know it makes them so happy. I think people would feel so much better about the neighborhood if there was a nice finished baseball, softball field there. You know, people do walk their dogs there. I'm not saying the community is perfect, but if you give somebody something nice, they might use it and take care of it and enjoy it. And instead it looks like a shabby, dirty with broken glass. And you understand what I'm saying. So I would love if the community, if the whoever, if we could give our people, and I could probably get some of the community involved, because like I'll bring it up with them when I'm working on the garden. People from the community always talk to me through the fence, and I've brought it up to them that I'd love to fix that up, or they've said to me, why don't you work on that? You know, and I said, why don't we work on that? You know, like we can make a little committee. I mean, I don't even live there, but I just want it to be nicer, you know.
Definitely, and thank you so much for bringing this up. You know, I've passed this, but for whatever reason, it wasn't my first thought when it comes to parks in our district, but it makes total sense. I'd like to add this.
It's not huge. I don't imagine it would take an enormous feat to give it like a life that I just think people would feel good. You know, the library, it should just.
Yeah, you know, I think I looked on the city's data, and Community District 12 ranks 53 or 54 out of 59 community boards in terms of access to parks. So Shoelace Park is great, but for people who live in Williamsbridge or further kind of in the middle of the district, you have to do a lot of walking to get to a park. So having these places, these kind of micro parks in the middle of the district are going to be hugely beneficial. So Stephanie, can I, and you know, obviously, I'm going to actually pause.
Send you some pictures I've taken of, you know, just the park over the years. I had made this sort of presentation that wasn't totally complete, but it just kind of gives a, you know, and I'll put in case.
I'd love to, you know, if you want to present that to the break, I'm going to save that. And if you want to present that at an upcoming meeting, I'll coordinate with you offline about that. But thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, the next conversation I'm about to show this little map of different micro kind of green spaces throughout the district. So, and Daniel just shared a grant program in the chat as well. But Stephanie, thank you for making this connection, and it won't be the last. So I'll bring this up, and we're going to talk more about this. Transitioning to the conversation with Bronx River Alliance and Parks Department, wondering from here, where do we go? We were talking about capital improvement requests, and Sid, you were starting to get into how there might be small fixes or small things that we can implement instead of necessarily tackling or using this meeting to tackle these giant budget requests. So what were you thinking?
Yeah, I don't want to say instead, we can tackle both.
Okay.
And I think, planning these bigger projects is going to be a lot more long-term. It'll take a lot of willpower, a lot of organizing to make these happen, and they can happen and they will happen. But I was getting to the point of accessible entrances in Shoelace Park. This is something that's a smaller scale, something that can be implemented on a shorter time frame. And obviously, I'm talking about Shoelace Park here, but we could talk about other parks as well. But I'd like to pinpoint, you know, exact locations like that we want to talk about instead of being like, oh, let's get some. Let's talk about like exact locations.
I'm all for it. Do you have exact location in mind?
You had sent one over, and I don't remember the cross street. I think it was like 217th.
So let me share my screen because some exact locations were mentioned today, and about other things too. So I'm sharing my screen of where am I? Shoelace Park, and you know, whenever I enter Shoelace Park, I usually enter from Gun Hill Road, and I walk across Allenville Avenue to 11th Street, and I kind of come through here. And one thing I notice is that there's this area right over here. This is right at 216th Street, which is a really popular area, but there's not a great walking path. So this is 216th Street. There's a really handy bike lane. If I'm biking or taking an e-scooter, I take this bike lane down, but it really doesn't lead anywhere. I have seen people trying to walk up this hill and fall on their face because there is no accessibility. And I was just really struck when I saw this because this could be a really great connection, an ADA connection, if this was kind of a graded surface. But this is something that I see as really, really critical. I mean, especially since we've got a bike access here, we've got this beautiful plaza space right over here at 216th Street. So I'm going to make sure that in any emails I write to the council member, emails we write to the community board, this is one of the places for advocacy that I'm going to try to see if we can champion, because the only other place, so there's this, this is at 219th, and there's another one at 222nd Street. But this whole stretch from, I don't know if you can, this whole stretch really doesn't have any ADA accessibility. So 216th Street seems like a great thing. I'm writing down a list. But if there are any other areas, I'm writing down a list right now that we can try to put together and send to the community board, the full board for approval. But if there are any intersections that people on this call have, or parks like Stephanie had mentioned, Renzi Park, that we can improve or need some kind of capital improvements, feel free to share and we can talk about those too. And while people kind of accumulate their thoughts, feel free to raise your hand if you have one. Daniel, you mentioned that there are two park houses that get flooded. You said that there's one at, what did I write, 219th Street, and the other one you said is at 222nd, is that right?
I think it's like 226 or 227. It's when you're right near the playgrounds, the restrooms, you know.
Yeah, it's 227th Street. That's the one.
Okay, so those are the two that would probably need major renovations.
I mean, so Felix, is it feasible? Is there any sort of renovations that could be done on them that's worthwhile?
At
In your
this point, I
opinion?
don't. They need to bring them up the flood zone, because anything they do now, that building has seen the water. That water has been onto the top of the building at one point, I heard. And Matthew Dorian, it was one of the storms a couple of years ago, one of the biggest hurricane storms that went through the city, that the only thing you could saw was the top of the roof. That's how much it flooded that whole area. It has gotten worse than that.
All right.
Luke, it looks like somebody's got their hand up again.
Okay, thanks. Ted, feel free to unmute.
Luke, thank you. Couple of things. I do agree with you about that entrance at 216th Street. Several times I would ride my bike there, and once I get down to the bottom of the hill, it's a little bit of a struggle to get onto the road inside the park. There is a partially paved road, but it's really need some enhancement. The second thing was the stretch of sidewalk between Gun Hill and I would say, what is that? What is that road? Magenta. right there, right where the river goes on the Bronx Boulevard to go on the other side. The road between there on the west side could it also needs paving. I know that they recently paved the eastern side, but the western side it's very rough, especially when you're riding bike or stroller.
You're
Then,
talking about here, right?
yes, right over where is that the Bronx River?
So this is Gun Hill Road. We're looking north. We're on Bronx Park. This is where the RV park is.
So it's opposite that side. Right where the RV park, that sidewalk was recently paved,
Right.
but the other side was nothing was done to that, and that's where it gets really rough. Right there,
Right.
that stretch right between there.
All right. I'm gonna make a note.
There is a if you look right above that, there's another like asphalt paving there, but even that area also is not very smooth for bikes or for roller skates or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's part of the area that actually connects Shoelace Park to Bronx River Forest. So
Correct.
yeah,
Correct.
good point.
So, and the third thing I had was Felix. We spoke about this before, but the what you call it, the bulletin board for 222nd Street. What's the status with that right now?
Well, I know it was within a park house and it was put up for the summer. Has it been put up for the summer at all?
I mean, I didn't check within the last week or so, but I haven't seen it there.
So they probably took it down again. I will ask shops where they're stored it at. The shops usually take it down for the winter time. Usually store it away for the winter.
But the last thing I know, remember it was vandalized, and
Mm.
I don't think it was brought back since then.
All right, I will look into that. I will talk to Matt Dorian. He was a previous manager in that sector, so I will talk to Matt Dorian.
Okay, thank you.
There's,
That's all I had for now, Luke.
Okay.
thanks, Ted. I'm guessing were you part of, did you work with Victoria around wanting to put flyers in the bulletin board?
That's correct. Yes, I
Ah,
have
very
the
good.
key. I still have the key for it. So once it gets there, I can put those flyers in.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. Takes a lot of things to make these things happen. So thank you, Felix. Felix got us some bike repair stations put up. One of them is in Shoelace near 227th or 229th. So really appreciate that. You can't do this work without parks. I did, and Felix, I know I've talked with some other folks in parks. That entrance near 229th, that was redone, as part of, it was redone by the renovation, and then DOT changed the traffic patterns over there, and
Yeah.
they took that gate out. So I figured I would note that here. I don't know if that's, a capital project or a wish list item that would work with maintenance and operations. But that's something that we've been advocating to restore so that it's harder for vehicles to just drive straight into the park or park
Yes.
in the park.
All right, I will talk to the chief about it, see what we can do. Because it was a
Yeah,
gate
no,
there before then,
Yep, that's that gate that was there.
and
Um,
somebody took it out then. All right, I will look into it, see what's going on with that.
well, yeah, I mean, Felix, I don't think, yeah, I'm mentioning it so that the community board can maybe, allocate funds or, do something like that. Because I was just wanted to, make sure we work in partnership in terms of it works for operations. Because I had to unlock these gates and I know they're a pain in the ass. So
So is it it was removed, do we know why it was removed? Exactly.
they,
I have no.
I think they So they redid that whole intersection. But they like changed the parking, they changed the traffic flow. You can only go one way on the road closest to the parkway. And as a part of that work, it was removed.
Okay.
I think I see the police cars there more than anything else.
By state DOT. I think it was state and city, actually. It might have been city DOT that removed it. I'm not sure. But it's not coming back. That's what I've heard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've been in Shoelace Park, and you see motorcycles sometimes riding down through the park, tearing through at really high speeds. So if there's any way we can prevent, large vehicles from maneuvering around, what's supposed to be a pedestrian and bike-friendly park, that'd be great. So yeah, I'll put that on my list as well. Are there any other specific items that you guys want to talk about? I'd like to. You offered to go over the master plan at a future day, and I'd like to take you up on that. I think that'd be great. And I don't know if you're free next month when we have the meeting or the month after, but having kind of a good refresher on that, because that's the first time I've heard about that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we can talk about which day will work best for us, but we can definitely do that at some point in the next couple months for sure. But if there's no other specific capital projects points that anybody wants to bring up, or expense points that anybody wants to bring up, I'll just plug our couple of events we have coming up.
Please do.
I'm going to share quickly again. Okay, so there's a lot of really cool stuff happening out on the Bronx River to end the season. The next one that's coming up is the Shoelace Park Showcase, which I hope some of you can make it to, hopefully all of you. It's going to be at 222nd Street in Shoelace Park, which is one of those blue plazas. And we're going to be tabling for all of our programs. There's going to be ecological nature and nature ID walks held. There's going to be historical tours. There's going to be free community paddling, free produce giveaway, free bike repair. And it's 12 to 4 on Saturday, October 21st in Shoelace Park. It's one of my favorite events of the year. We love coming up here, and we're looking forward to it. And I believe, Luke, you'll be joining to potentially table for CB12. So come hang out with us and say hi to Luke in person. And then, oops, sorry. The other event that we have, which is our last big day of the program season, is going to be Saturday, November 4th. We're hosting our second ever Bronx River Slow Roll, where we ride the entire length of the Bronx River in the Bronx from Woodlawn to Concrete Plant Park. About 5.5 miles will take you up to the border along that new Webster bike lane I talked about earlier, and then go all the way down to Concrete Plant Park, exploring the Greenway, seeing the work that has been done, the work that's currently being done, and the work that still needs to be done. And then ending at the community banquet. This is also the second annual community banquet in Concrete Plant Park, which is a celebration of the foodway, which is one of the only places in New York City you can legally, freely harvest fruits, veggies, and medicinal plants. It's a really incredible way to end the year. I hope you guys can come to one or both of these events. And I did share these flyers with Luke. So Luke, if you could please circulate them around.
Definitely. And I don't know, Ted, if you're still on the call, did you say you were available on the 21st to table as well?
Unfortunately, actually, I would love to attend all of these events. They're very interesting events. But the first one on the 21st, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town.
Okay, no worries. That's great. Thank you so much, Sid. I'll definitely be sure to see if we can get the board office to circulate those flyers so that people can attend. And if you haven't, follow Bronx River Alliance on social media. They post some great videos and engaging content on Instagram. I don't know the handle offhand, but definitely follow. And thank you guys so much for all your support and engagement, and I can't wait to have further conversations about the great work you do.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Luke, before you go, I just had a quick question. I'm not sure if you touched on this in the beginning. I think I might have seen a presentation, but the work that's happening up by 233rd Street. I know they're doing the overpass bridge on the highway, but there's also some work being done, I believe, by the river and also in the park. Did you talk about any of those?
So I mentioned it. I saw a presentation last year, I think from DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, which talked about installing a pump near the Bronx River Parkway so that near 233rd Street, I'll share my screen. But Sid and Daniel, if you want to hang out, feel free to share your expertise, but don't feel forced. Okay, so here we are. So from what I remember, they were doing some work to install, this is 233rd Street, Shoelace Park in the Bronx River. They were going to use some of this space, which really is kind of segmented by highways and isn't really very easily accessible, for like a pumping station to dispel some of the water that comes and floods the tracks. But I don't have the exact update on that yet, and I'm going to try to get some more information.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is, bye, see you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Luke, there are two projects we know of going on around there. There's some dredging work as well as bridge work that DOT is doing to improve the parkway. So I know Ted mentioned that there was some construction. So those are the two that we're aware of.
Awesome. Ted, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does, because I know there was some additional work. There was some work in addition to the bridge itself, the roadway. So thank you for that clarification.
Definitely.
See you guys. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is talking about different areas in the district that are functioning as green spaces. These have been called paper streets in the past. They are city-owned parcels of land that really haven't been built out, and they create a really interesting opportunity for community members who want to create community gardens in their neighborhoods. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ujamaa Garden that just broke ground this past season near Boston Road and where is it exactly? Kind of Marola Place, right. So Ujamaa Garden, that was a city-owned land that used to be kind of considered a street. And I'll share my screen if that's helpful. And it had a gate around it, and they were able to coordinate with the city to give them access to the space. And if you're familiar with organizations like Green Thumb, they help community groups put together presentations or permits or requests to convert some of these spaces into community gardens. So I wanted to talk about the different ones that I've found throughout the district. Maybe if anybody here has also encountered these, please feel free to share. But I'll share a map that I put together over the last year or so, showing some of these city-owned streets. So everywhere you see a tree here, This is what is considered a paper street. It's a section of road that should be a road, but it's just green space. And they vary in size, but they're really scattered all throughout the district. And these are areas that, you know, if you live over here, you don't really have quick and easy access to a park. But what made me realize that maybe these spaces exist was when I was in Hoffman Park, and I'll show you a screenshot or a thing. And if this gets too disorienting, let me know. So I was in Hoffman Park, and I noticed this abandoned street, and here it is. So Hoffman Park is right over here, and at the northwest corner, there's a couple blocks where it's just abandoned former roadway. So this got me thinking, how did this come to be? Are there other places like this, and how can we improve it? These are things that, after doing a little bit more research, I found that the city, you can ask for participatory budgeting and maybe get the city to turn these into a space that's more intentional. But this one you see here is actually, it goes all the way from the 5 train all the way to Gunther. So it's these 2 long blocks of just green space. It's got a lot of trees in it. Somebody, I think, has a boat that they've illegally just dumped here. So there are definitely spaces that need a lot of resources to keep up. But in my neighborhood, I've been working on one that we've been calling Chestnut Street Garden. And it's right here, it's at the corner of Chestnut Street and Barnes Avenue. And I've been working with neighbors to turn it into a little garden. So we planted a couple trees here. This is an old photo. Over the weekend, we planted 200 daffodils right in front here. And after we've been doing this for a couple times, engaging the neighbors, having volunteers from people down the street, we started to learn the history. And it turns out that the neighbors here used to, I think in the 80s, they used to plant crops here. And then one day the city ripped it out to do some sewer restoration work. But it just highlights that there are these green spaces in our community that maybe we can reclaim as formal green spaces. So I just wanted to kind of light that fire. If anybody is interested in doing that in the district, I'll send you this map of different ones that I found. But kind of broadening this conversation even more is, these are places in the district that are not parkland. These are street land. But as Stephanie brought up, we have parkland in our district that maybe could be utilized better. And that's where the Renzi playground improvements could maybe come. So I think we can all agree that having green space is really important. And finding that and utilizing that better is really important too. So I just wanted to share those resources. And if anybody has any questions about how they can use maybe, or how they can approach different areas of your neighborhood that might be abandoned, how to find out if it's owned by the city or privately, I'll just give you a brief kind of overview of that. So,
Luke.
Yeah.
I have probably at least 3 of those addresses that I would like to share with you. Not sure they're all in our district, but certainly we can look into them to see if they can become usable space for us.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you want to go look at that now or at another time?
Yeah, we definitely can look at it now.
Okay, great. So
the one you mentioned at Chestnut, I'm not sure that's the same one I have, but I think I have the address here as Wallace and Bartholdi.
Sorry, you said Wallace and what?
Bartholdi Street.
Okay, Bertholdi. Try to see. I'll look it up on here.
But there's Chestnut, and it's right above North Oak. Yep.
Challenge with this section is that it's got this fence here. So if you want to access this, you would have to ask the city for approval. And they would require you to form some kind of organization, like a nonprofit or 501c3 or something like that, so that you can buy liability insurance. And I think liability insurance costs maybe for these types of things, from what I heard at New Jama Garden, it's like $500 a year or $100 a year. I'm not too sure. But the city will, after you get insurance, they will rent this out to you for something like $1 a year. So as long as you have liability insurance, they will give you access, and it takes a long time. Ujama Garden, I think, took maybe 5 months, but it's possible. And this is a perfect location for an area that could use some trees and some greenery. But here's the other side of it. But yeah, this is a perfect location if somebody wanted to kind of try to make this into a community garden. That's at Bartholdi and Wallace.
So the second one is at it's AD and I think it's in New England Thruway.
80 and what?
New England, actually it's Baychester. It's a service road for the but it's actually Baychester.
Let me see here. Wait, you said it was at AD?
AD. It's like right opposite Co-op City.
Okay. Where are we at? Where's, here it is. You're talking about here?
Actually, yeah, it goes on. It if the road was extended, it will go to Edson. But there is go down to the next. It's probably Arno. It's probably Arno.
Arno. Oh, you're talking about here?
Yes, Arno, right there.
Okay, so let's look. So what I do whenever I look for these types of spaces is I go to the city's website. This is the, here, I'll share this. This is the zoning and land use map. So this will tell you all where the, sorry, I'll turn off some of these layers. This gives you property information. So the parcel we're looking at is right here at Arno. So yeah, this is not private property. This is a street. There's some other research that we could do. We go to streets.planning.nyc.gov, share this tab, and this will tell you, let me see, where are we at? Sometimes you have to look at these other maps. So Arno, see, these are these weird overlays. Throughout history, these maps have been redrawn, so you can look up to see what they are. But yeah, that looks like also a potential paper street. The thing that happens a lot of times, though, is you have to check with the board office because, and the Department of Consumer, what is it, DCAS is, administrative services, they will, sometimes the city has leases to these paper streets. So the city will say, so the next door neighbor will say, hey, New York City, you have this paper street here, nobody's building on it, can I use it to park my trucks? And then the city will say, yes, that's totally fine. But those easement agreements and those leases aren't published online. So to determine whether or not maybe this building has some kind of agreement to use this land, you would have to find out from DCAS, which George has helped me with at a few different locations, but it's honestly kind of difficult to get a straight answer. But this is a challenging one because you've got the fences and you've got encroachment. Somebody has encroached privately onto this public land. So, and it looks like it's probably also got a lot of contamination from vehicles, maybe gas or oil or something. But definitely something worth beautifying.
Okay, and the third one I have is Waring and Kingsland. There's another street there. I can't remember the name of it now, but it would have extended to Kingsland.
Okay, yeah, I think this is another one.
You're not sharing your screen.
Sorry. Here it is. So you're talking about this stretch.
Yeah.
To orient everybody, I'll just zoom out a little bit. This might be Community Board 10, or sorry, 11 actually. So let's.
That's what I wasn't sure if it was.
Yeah, let me see. So on the Zola website, I'm just going to pull up. Usually they show you community districts. So Waring and Kingsland. Yeah, so this is technically a street. It's not in Community Board 12, but it looks like it's being maintained, at least partially. I think I might have stumbled upon this once. Got a lot of reads, and what does this sign say? No dumping. So this is not in Community Board 12, but it definitely could use some TLC. Sometimes it's way easier to access and use portions of property like this. Let's say you want to plant a tree here. You might want to check with a lawyer, but if you're not climbing over a fence, if it's owned publicly, if it doesn't have any leases, I don't know of any enforcement or anything illegal that would say, hey, you're not allowed to clean up this area or plant a tree. One thing, if you want to activate spaces like this that don't have fences that are publicly owned as streets, you might want to talk to the neighbors and say, hey, what do you think about, planting some sunflowers here or something like that? Because these spaces can often get overrun by invasive species. That'll just, like this, you see we got a lot of diversity and trees, but here there's just one species that took over. So if we don't have people taking care of these spaces, they can kind of become monoculture, which means that one species will just take over and crowd everything else out. And that affects a lot of biodiversity and beauty. So, but this looks like a really wonderful spot. Unfortunately, it's not in the district. And it's even got a little walking path. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Ted. These are wonderful.
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions before we close the meeting, or any comments about your experience in the district and parks or anything like that? All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm going to close it, and we'll see you next month. and hopefully at some of these events that the Bronx River Alliance talked about tonight.
Luke, can you, are you gonna send those out or are you gonna give them to Ursula?
I'll send them to Ursula, and she'll distribute to the mailing list.
Okay, great.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Take care. Thank you, Luke. Thank you all.
Thank you.